What's up, Packer fans? Happy Friday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. It's not just any episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. It's a Mike Wahle episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. Always appreciate you guys joining. Most importantly, I appreciate Mike Wahle joining. You can find him on social media at Mike Wahle68. You can find him on Process to Perform and the On My Block podcast. Mike, great to have you back. How have you been?
Doing great. Doing great. Thanks for having me on, Andy.
Yeah, I always appreciate it. We thought maybe one of these days we get to talk about a Packers victory.
Yeah.
This apparently is the week. We actually get to talk about a Packers win. One of my common questions I've kind of been asking people this week, and I'm super interested in your take as well. It's a bad Rams team. They've got Brett Rippon at quarterback. Well, they had Brett Rippon at quarterback. He's no longer on their roster. What was real from this game? What's a real takeaway that you felt, all right, that's repeatable? That's not fool's gold. That's not just because it was a bad Rams team. Was there anything that looked better or repeatable to you?
Well, I think the problem is when you don't have Matthew Stafford on that team, their own media will tell you they're a one-win team. They're not very good.
Yep.
And so you like that you gave up 3 points. You like that you gave up 68 yards on the ground. You love all of that, but realistically, I think it's very difficult to garner information from a team that going into the season, you were kind of like, this team's not very good. And then they lose. Stafford starts dealing and Puka Nacua shows up and it's exciting. I thought some of their young guys on their defensive line were 91 gave us some fits. I mean, he got us. He led the team in tackles, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Byron Young are tied with Byron Young, who's the number 0, the defensive end. So I thought those guys did a pretty good job. The reality is, if you take anything away from this game, for me, it's just that Aaron Jones has to be on the field as much as possible. Please give him the ball. Everybody else, don't get out of the way. Certainly need some other people to step up, but he should get the ball as many times as humanly possible.
The entire offense needs to revolve around number 33. I've said it a couple times, but the unfortunate thing is I think this was sort of their plan going into the year. We saw it a little bit to start the game against Chicago, obviously heavily involved. They get the big screen pass to him. They get the Texas route for a touchdown that he unfortunately gets injured on. And then he's out for a few weeks. They're extremely cautious with him the 2 weeks prior to this when you're just kind of getting him back up to speed. I think this was the vision for it all along, and just injuries basically made it so that they couldn't go along with that. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, and I've been fooled before, and all of a sudden Aaron Jones gets forgotten again at times, but I'm hoping that this is a harbinger of things to come, and we are going to see a very Aaron Jones-laden offense moving forward.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the other takeaway for me is I've been banging the drum for Isaiah McDuffie for a long time. And listen, he might not have the range of like Quay Walker, and I know he's not a first-round pick, but in that kind of game, if he's not on the field, then everybody should be fired. Because he's like, if you don't respect the quarterback's ability to throw, which you don't against the Rams without Matthew Stafford, you need like core thumper guys on the field that are just going to set the tone. And I just don't know that we have a guy that's better than him for just doing that specific job. Now, again, like he might not, maybe there's some things in the passing game that I'm missing or whatnot, but I don't think you can have enough of those guys on your team. And I just love when he can go out there and do his thing and get everybody fired up.
I love the instincts with McDuffie. And to me, instincts is 1A when it comes to linebacker play. I think we've probably talked about this in the past, but it's the number one thing that I've missed on in the past when I've watched really talented players, off-ball linebackers in college that maybe didn't have the instincts, didn't have the take-on ability, but they could fly around the football. Stephon Anthony, the kid out of Clemson, is the guy I always talk about, who got drafted in the first round by the Saints. Super athlete, really fun player. And then he got to the NFL and didn't have the instincts and didn't know how to take on people and just kind of washed out of the NFL in like 3-4 years. Seeing a player that has the instincts, that's willing to shoot those gaps like Isaiah did this past week, it can definitely pay dividends, especially in the running game. And I thought that was one of his best performances of his career.
A lot of the stuff that they're doing is by design, but to your point, just, hey, see ball, hit ball it's pretty simple. Football is a really easy sport. We try to overcomplicate it. But when you give yourself the opportunity to be successful and impose your will by playing on their side of the line of scrimmage, it does change the makeup of the game. It changes the way that your teammates feel about themselves, quite frankly. Like it changes the change goes far beyond just your individual play. And you need as many guys on the team as possible that are willing to do that and that have that kind of instinct. Those are the guys that, you know, were the standouts in high school. You know, the kids that just always it carries on. And some of these guys, like you, to your point, there's some really good, talented athletes, but it's not like Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are the most talented people in the National Football League. They are very talented, but they're not the most talented linebackers in the National Football League, but they're the best linebackers in the National Football League. If you watch tape, like those guys pop off everywhere you go because they're put in a position to be successful, but they're ultra competitive, aggressive, and just have no fear whatsoever. And you gotta stock your team with as many dudes like that as you can.
Another conversation for another day, but I still can't get over the fact that the Bears traded away Roquan Smith just to sign Edmonds to a massive contract in the following offseason. But like I said, another conversation for another day. But Quay Walker, as of Thursday, was not practicing still, so it is very possible that Isaiah McDuffie will get another opportunity to play with Devondre Campbell at linebacker this upcoming week against Pittsburgh, which should be a good game for Isaiah McDuffie to play in. It's not super similar to Brett Rippon with, Kenny Pickett, but probably a more run-oriented attack again would be my guess.
Yeah, they're going to be their offensive. Like, listen, their numbers aren't great as far as the Steelers' rushing numbers, but their offensive line is actually pretty good. Bringing in Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington from Georgia has helped out a lot. Like Darnell Washington's a unit. Like, he's a big dude, and Broderick Jones playing right tackle, probably the most talented tackle in the draft last year. Isaac Seumalo, coming over from Philly a couple years ago, he's the bell cow for those guys. Like, he makes everything run. He plays at a little bit faster speed than everybody else. Najee Harris is getting downhill. I mean, both the backup plays well. That team is struggling, not in the running game because of the running game. That team is struggling because their receivers and their quarterback do not know what's going on at the same time. Their timing of the routes is terrible. The spacing is terrible. The play calling is one of the palms up moment. And then when he's got stuff, like, he doesn't always hit it, but they've got talent everywhere. And I think if that team just decided, like, we're just going to run quick screens, keepers, and run the ball, like, they'd actually probably put up more points than I think they're averaging like 16 a game. I think they do a lot better than that.
Yeah, it's going to be, speaking of another conversation for another day, you mentioned Darnell Washington and Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones, 1 pick after Lucas Van Ness. Darnell Washington, I want to say 10, 12 picks after Tucker Kraft. Obviously, Kraft and Washington.
Wait, did you say after Tucker Kraft?
Yeah, after Tucker Kraft. Yep. Darnell Washington went pick 93 to Pittsburgh. He fell further than people expected. Tucker Kraft went pick... Where did he just go? Man, I just had it. Where did it go? Hold on one second. 78 to Green Bay. So 15 picks prior to Washington. Kraft was taken. And the interesting thing was everyone thought Washington was like this dream pick for Green Bay. All the athletic scores, having to replace Mercedes Lewis as a blocking tight end. Like, everyone was all over, like, Green Bay's going to love Darnell Washington. That's going to be the guy that they want. And then they took 2 tight ends over him. Specifically the Kraft one was interesting.
Well, Musgrave was like, you see Musgrave, but I mean,
and Musgrave and Washington would have been a perfect, like, 1-2 combo at tight end too. You got your move tight end, your receiving tight end in Musgrave, and you got your Washington that can just maul people. Like, it would have been like a perfect. Yeah,
I wasn't like doing cartwheels over him during when I watched tape on him, but I mean, here's what happens, right? They get into the room and somebody's going to be really smart. Like, there's a really smart guy in the room that goes, no. We should pick this kid instead. No. I know that Georgia kid just played in national championship pedigree. He's 285. No, but Tucker Kraft, Tucker Kraft might be great. Who knows? Yep. But right now, I would say that's interesting.
It is interesting, and will be one of those to monitor through the course of the next handful of seasons for sure. All right, I got to ask.
As interesting as Broderick Jones, by the way. You don't even get me started on that pick. Are you kidding me? Oh, that kid is so good.
He is. That was another one that I thought Green Bay was going to be in on. I knew they would be in on Van Ness too, because he's just like the ultimate Packer, or like their draft type. But I thought Broderick Jones would be another. It'd be interesting. I know there were some people that thought maybe Jones would play at guard for a little bit, but like obviously with Bakhtiari going down, it would have been is he playing? He's playing right tackle in Pittsburgh, I'm assuming, right? Or yeah, that would have been interesting. But they could have moved Zach to left. They could have done a variety of different things.
Hey, let me ask you this: so I'm going to give you. I'm not trying to be a jerk.
Yeah, no.
Lucas Van Ness, the first season, Lucas Van Ness. I'm going to give you options. Okay, the first season that he gets 10 sacks in a season. Okay.
Yep.
Next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, never.
If you were to bet from a casino standpoint, you would choose never, right? Like I think that would be the most likely.
Based on I would choose never.
Yeah,
and I don't think that makes him a bad player, but I don't think he's ever going to get 10 sacks. I never thought Aaron Campbell would get 10 sacks either, though.
Well, maybe former Iowa defensive linemen that are edge rushers are Green Bay's sweet spot. It took Cam until like what, year 3 or 4 to kind of break out too.
Year 4, I got a call from year 4. I remember I got a call from Tauscher, and Tauscher's like, he's like, dude, Camden's gonna be, because Camden was our boy, but you know, he wasn't like that. He wasn't great. He just hard worker, really good dude, talked like a robot, you know, like one of those guys. And but he was a great guy, and he was a great guy. And I remember Tauscher calls me and he's like, man, he's like, Camden's gonna be like really good this year. And I go, why? And he goes, dude, he's beat me in practice. And like Tauscher literally never got beat. He never got beat in pass pro.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, he beat me a couple times this year. Like, and he was shocked, you know. And sure enough, I think Camden had like 15 sacks. I was like, well, if you can beat Tauscher, you can beat anybody.
Apparently, I'm just going to go on a million asides today. But what made Mark so fantastic in pass pro? Because like he's a 7th round pick coming out. I think the MO on Mark, and I don't think this is totally fair, or maybe it is. You can tell me. It was like it wasn't always like the prettiest, but he just always got the job done. But what made him so great at what he did?
Honestly, it's very rudimentary, but like his technique was, you would never teach what he does. You would never teach his footwork. You would never teach his hand placement ever. He's got from like here to like his knees, whatever's I just lost you. Whatever's going on down there, like his stability and like core strength and whatever you want to call it. We call it Tausch heavy. And you just could not, he was like, you could not knock him over. It was impossible for him to get knocked over and move. And the other thing that it wasn't always pretty, but you have to give Tausch his flowers. Like he was a ridiculously good athlete, given the way that he presents. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't look like that, but he can play hoops. He's good at, I mean, you go ahead, give him a baseball bat. He'll be the best batter on the team. Like he's a really good athlete, and he doesn't have a lot of fear in him at all. And so he could just go, but everybody would watch and just go like, I don't even understand how this is happening. Like, and literally, even in his like 8th year, we'd all be like,
it works. It works.
It just works for him.
Amazing. All right. I don't even know how to ask this appropriately. Can you tell me about offensive offsides, how you were taught? Was it the right call? Should it have been called? What was your view of those 2 plays?
Okay. So I found something today that really kind of got on my nerves about this when I was prepping for my show. So offsides, here's the deal. If you can't line up in the neutral zone is defined as basically the space of the football across.
Yep.
And then for us offensive linemen or our side of the football, there's something to do with the helmet of the center. The problem with all the rules now is that they write the rule book and then sometimes they fudge when they don't really care about a rule. And they've done that for years. And now what they're doing is they've decided, like, for example, all of the roughing the passer has turned into unnecessary roughness calls all over the field. It's absolutely absurd. That's a different subject for a different day, I'm sure. But they've decided that the tush push they don't really like because they're afraid somebody's going to break their neck. That's really what's happening. And so they're going to start calling these things. And you could put up 100 different Philadelphia Eagle shots with where Rhyan was, and they would look exactly the same if you just painted the helmets green. But so the problem is the way that they're monitoring things is so arbitrary. But here's the deal, and this should bother the players in the locker room. I'm going to read you a quote from Rhyan when they asked him about it. says a quote, I quote, "I think they have a point of emphasis every week." Side note, they do have a point of emphasis every week, and they send a video. Quote, "Apparently they send out a weekly video talking about that. Apparently that was in the weekly video, but I had no idea. I didn't even know they sent out a weekly video on points of emphasis. It was on the call, blah, blah, blah." End quote. Here's the thing. I've been on multiple teams as a coach and a player. This is the first time in 15 years that I've heard that a player who's been around as long as John doesn't even know there's a video and the coaching staff isn't showing it to them. And that is like, when I was in Miami, I went through 3 coaching staffs, all of which were losing coaching staffs, like not cream of the crop, right? But they had learned enough from Bill Belichick to know you show your players the video, you show them which referees are going to be a part of the game, and you show how many what calls they've been calling over the last couple of weeks. You give them that information because that's part of football, that's part of preparation. And the fact that they didn't know about that, like he didn't even know there was a video, I was like, I couldn't believe that's. I mean, for me, that's like that's an indictment, man. That's a bad deal.
I totally agree. That is absolutely great. I mean, I've heard on just like the announcers talk about weekly video, or like coaches talk with it in the past. So like along the way, I knew that there was a weekly point of emphasis in a weekly video. I think it usually gets talked about when there's like a major point of emphasis, whether it be like the catch rule or something like that. And they're like, oh, we sent it out to teams this week of like what we're expecting here. And like, yeah, that is beyond crazy. And what, this is his 4th year in the league, right? John Runyon's? Yeah, I think 4th year in the league.
But but John, it's not John. Like John.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, John would have no reason to know. There's only one reason that he doesn't know about that.
Because the coaches aren't showing him. Yeah, no, that is very, very frustrating. Hopefully that's something that gets corrected in Green Bay moving forward. But yeah, interesting calls, and definitely disappointing to hear that that they didn't even know about it and didn't see the tape ahead of time. I'm hoping it'll be corrected moving forward and we won't see the call again, but you never know. All right, let's talk about a positive one. Wanted to talk about Sean Rhyan. He plays 7 snaps in the middle of the game for the aforementioned Jon Runyan Jr. Plays 8 snaps at the end of the game for Elgton Jenkins, more garbage time-ish snaps. But your first impressions of Sean Rhyan and really his first snaps in his career in the NFL?
I know a lot of people got excited about that. Listen, he went in and did his job. Listen, I'd say this: he has good bend. He's explosive off the ball, as you would expect. And it's a nice shot in the arm to see a kid come in and then he's trying to finish. He's active. They're like, because you see, guys get not guys, but some players get complacent. And you see like when a guy comes in and he's moving around, you go, oh wow, that's different. Yeah. Which makes you go, wow, some of these other guys must be a little bit complacent. They're not looking to like clean up the pile. They're not looking to, push their guy over the pile, take a shot on the defensive end coming inside. So I liked all of that. He's got a long way to go with, foot placement, hand placement. It's not like he had, he had 2 snaps, I think, on AD. 1 snap he got bull rush back in the run game. The second snap, I mean, it's Aaron Donald. Yep. But, he didn't fall over and look like a fool, so I think that's positive. But it's way too early, at least for me, not having seen him practice, to say he did, such a commendable job over Jon Runyan Jr. that they need to make some sort of adjustment there. But having said that, if you were just to look down the road at like who's probably the better prospect, I would say just athletically, it looks like he was. Okay. But I don't know, I don't know where that puts you for this week.
Yeah, Runyan did return to practice on Thursday, so good sign for him. I would assume that Runyan's probably going to be their starter if he's good to go. And I think just the big step for Rhyan was that he moved ahead of Royce Newman seemingly, and is kind of now in that backup guard spot, which seems to be a improvement. And again, he went in and very limited snaps, played decent enough to at least not make a fool of himself against Aaron Donald, which is something in and of itself. Excuse me.
No doubt.
Speaking of the offensive line, from the untrained eye, it looked like it was a little bit better this week overall. You do have Aaron Donald on the field. You've got, as you mentioned, Byron Young is a pretty good player. Thoughts on if the offensive line played better this week? Was there anything different, or was it kind of same old and they just kind of got away with some stuff?
you don't see as many guys missing blocks, like completely missing blocks. So that was, that's a huge step forward, certainly. Aaron Jones being on the field, it just makes a difference. It just does. Yeah. Even if his numbers aren't great, it makes a difference in the fact that like he can jump cut on the touchdown. Musgrave's beat. I think it's Hoyt stands him up in the hole, but he jump cuts out of the way, walks into the untouched in the end zone. Everyone goes, "Oh, great job." The offensive line is going to I think they're just going to continue to improve. And maybe at the end of the season, you have a group that you go, man, this is really going to be something next year. And I think, the big jump, unfortunately, for this team at 3-5 and going into this stretch, you hope they make it an in-season improvement that you can notice week to week against good defenses, which the Rams were not.
Right.
You're playing a lot of young guys over there. But I think the big jump for this team is going to be in 2024, quite frankly. And that's probably some reshuffling, which I think you got some core guys in there now, and it just becomes a question of like what kind of offseason you're going to like. Myers, are you going to finish up this season playing better, and then are you going to go into next season offseason just I'm going to be the best version of myself next year, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It seems like something happened between the end of last year, this season, or last season and this season, and they're just kind of catching up, and hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way, and I do want to see it against better defenses. I think this next stretch of 4 games will be very indicative of, was there anything positive to take away? Is it trending in the right direction, or are we still the same team and just you happen to play a Rams team that's not very good? I'm hoping it's the earlier that they're actually making some incremental improvements and we can kind of see it week to week, but time will tell. And these next 4 weeks should be a good test of that. Staying on the offensive line really quick. There's been some talk. Yosh Nijman did return to practice on Thursday as well. So we'll see if he's able to go this week, but both players healthy, Rasheed Walker, Yosh Nijman. We've seen both of them over the past 2 weeks because Nijman would start and then he would go out hurt and Rasheed Walker would replace him. Your thoughts right now on Walker, Nijman? Is there a difference? Does it matter, or kind of which one you prefer at this point?
Yeah, this is another tough one for me. If you watch tape, it's like how many times does a player get beat and nothing happens versus how many times something happens and everybody jumps on it? Like how many plays you almost got hit, or almost gave up a sack, almost gave up a hit, and with Yosh, there's more than a few of those. Yeah, I think over the last couple of weeks. And so Rasheed Walker, I think when we really sat down and watched both of these guys earlier in the season, I came to the conclusion Rasheed Walker is a more physical prospect, moves well laterally. He's had some issues for different reasons, I think, in some pass protection things this year. And they played some really good players that are quite frankly better than he is. But I'm kind of looking like, who do you want to build around? I would say you want to build around Rasheed Walker, just because I think from a physical standpoint, I've never got the feeling that if you needed a yard, you could count on Yosh to get a yard. But I do feel that way about Rasheed. So that might not be true 99 times out of 100, but you watch enough tape, you just kind of go, I know what I'm seeing.
We are in lockstep on that one. I know a lot of people really like Yosh, and I did think based on a few of the games that Rasheed had, like in just the way the offensive line was playing, if they wanted to try Yosh, I might try to throw some crap at the wall and see something that sticks. Awesome. But just based on these past couple games again, I don't know. I still like the long-term prospect of Rasheed better, not to mention the fact that Yosh is a free agent after the season. I think there's probably a decent chance he's not back, and Rasheed is going to be on the team probably for the next couple of years. Yeah,
no doubt. Again, I think that the Broderick Jones thing is really hitting home right now that you brought up earlier.
Sorry.
Imagine if you had that problem.
Yeah.
But you look at next season, and certainly with Bakhtiari, the chances are he's not going to be here. I don't know how the math works out, Andy, but I think at some point you got to cut bait. As much as everybody loves him, including him, I think when he's healthy, I think he's one of the top 3 guys in the league, and he has been for years. He's a Hall of Famer in my book. I mean, I think he's that good. But you need to find – you don't have a single dominant player at one position on the offensive line. And I don't mean like Trent Williams dominant. I mean like I'm I'm a bad dude who like people got to worry about me being in the game dominant. And you need one of those guys at least. And the guy could be on the team and we just don't know it. But they got to find somebody who fits that mold.
Could not agree more. I think they need a little bit more nasty on that offensive line. I think it was Elton who actually like finished a block on the second level this week. And I'm like, thank you. Like, that's nice to see. Like, it's just like a little bit more nasty, a little bit more finish can go a long way. Sometimes they need a player like that. So I'm with you.
We used to say like, we used to have stats for knockdowns. And it was like a point of pride. You know, if you wanted to be a really good player, you were getting your dude on the ground like 8-9 times a game, period. Like it wasn't 1, it wasn't 3. And I know the times have changed a little bit. Like I'm not want to go old head on everybody, but there is a mentality that comes along with being just a dominant dude. And the way that people see you and the way the opponent thinks about you and thinks about preparing for that game, it's like, I guarantee if you ask the Packers about the Steelers on defense, they would be like, yeah, whatever. Like Cam Hayward's still a dude. Like dude can still play. That Highsmith kid, he's a stud. Like I can guarantee our tight end rooms are watching Highsmith tape because that kid could play. You know, and the reputations mean something in this league. I'm not talking about amongst fans. I'm talking about amongst players. It means something.
If I had to guess, with not knowing like the actual statistics or not having the actual statistics, I would guess Green Bay's in the bottom 3, if not bottom of teams in knockdowns along the offensive line.
It would have to be close. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be very, very close and not in a good way. All right. The really last quick one on the offensive line. I have seen this far more often, and I want to get your opinion on it. I did a whole video on it as well. There are a smattering of people that are calling for Zach Tom to be moved from right tackle to left tackle. I believe with the belief that left tackle is more important than right tackle. I don't know if it's from the blind side. Yeah, obviously you are protecting the blind side of a right-handed quarterback. Your thought on is there something to left tackle being more important than right tackle in the modern NFL? And then B, would there be a benefit to moving Zach Tom to left tackle, knowing that you'd then have to move Rasheed Walker and Yosh Nijman to right tackle?
Okay. Yes. The left side of the line is always going to be more valuable than the right side, and not as much as it used to be. I remember back when I started playing, if you were on defensive ends would be lining up to go against the right tackle, was always the worst guy on the field as far as pass pro. It was the worst. I mean, Tauscher was like he was an exception, not the rule. Yep. And if you look at all the people who have broken the record over the last 40 years, they're all left defensive ends playing over right tackles. I mean, there's a reason for that because the guys aren't as good. So the left tackle position has always been important. Is it as important with the mobile quarterback and everything? It probably still is, because regardless, if you throw better to your right, you're going to be in a lot of positions where that ball can reach out and get hit if you don't see it. I mean, at least you can see the rush coming on the one side than the other. So I do think there is more value. Moving Zach Tom I wouldn't understand even. I would love to hear a football guy say that and explain to me why, because that wouldn't make any sense to me, given the fact that he looks like he's playing well where he's at, but he's not like he's elite. He is getting, learning his technique. He's going to continue to improve, but he's not a guy. It's not like you drafted Jonathan Ogden and you're just holding him at guard for a year. Like, he's got to learn this whole thing. This is a relatively new experience from, like, playing tackle. I don't know is natural for him like it is for Orlando Pace or Laramie Tunzel or something, like those guys. This is something that he's going to continue to develop and improve on. And I think if you can, look down the road and go, if Lane Johnson's been the standard, is it more realistic to Zach Tom being more of a Lane Johnson or a left tackle? I'd say he looks to me, eyeball wise, he's closer to that kind of mold. So I would stick him there.
Yeah, right tackle, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I wouldn't move him, especially this is his second year. It's still a newish position to him. He's been moved all around before. He's playing well. Like, it's the one thing that's kind of going well on offense. I would not want to try to break that. And the other thing too, and I talked about this, is let's say you do move him to left tackle this year, and then David Bakhtiari is back next year. So you're just going to move him back to right tackle and move him somewhere else again, or you draft a left tackle in the first round. Like, I don't know. I would just keep him where he is. I don't see a ton of benefit there.
I just don't understand where the offensive line has not played well, but you're protecting like, think about what's going on in the context of the entire game. You're protecting a first-year starter at quarterback who doesn't have a great sense of timing. He's not processing as fast as his predecessor pro-snap. Yep. You have guys that are not always on the same page in the receiving core. So it's like, if you move a guy right now from one position to another, you're saying that, like, he is so much more, he's like a standard deviation more valuable over there than he is where he's at. And I just don't see in the context of this offense how that would be possible. Like, he's totally not like Zach. I've been talking about Zach Tom since looking at him in college, that I thought he was a huge find, but I don't think he's that good. Like, I'm not willing to go there.
And there's always the possibility too, where he gets to left tackle and he's just not as comfortable there and doesn't play as well, and he plays worse. And then you move Yash and Rashid to right tackle and they're not as comfortable there and they play worse there. And you end up breaking two things at the same time. Who knows? I've never understood it either. I'm with you in lockstep in that situation. All right, before we get you out of here, a couple quick thoughts on Packers Steelers. Obviously, TJ Watt's going to be public enemy #1 for Green Bay this week. You've talked in the past how impressive he is as a pass rusher. What makes him so great, and how would you go about trying to slow him down?
He does a great job. His get off is elite. They're very, very across the entire line. They're very smart. They pick up calls, tells, and tendencies. Like, they've got everything kind of figured out pre-snap. He does a remarkable job at the top of his rush being able to turn. He makes turns around the tackle that you don't think he should be able to make. He gets skinny, uses leverage. He's got great bend. He spends a lot of time working on mobility on his lower body, and you can tell just the way he can kind of bend around right tackles. I think a lot of what he does now is people are afraid of him, and his myth. It's like, it's like the Hercules movie. Like, the myth kind of builds into something even more than as good as he is. They think he's not Max Crosby. He's not Myles Garrett, and those are two different body types, but like, he's not. Max Crosby is a totally different animal and dangerous in every single way. Any 2-point, 3-point, stand up over the tight end, I mean, he's scary on every play. What you see happening with TJ, they did it last week, is like they sent 2 tight ends at him and then pulled the backside guard to clean him up. And unfortunately, what happens with those genius blocking schemes is, like, they green dog the linebacker and they sandwich the quarterback as he's letting the ball go. So for me, I think you got to be really smart with TJ in, don't give, like, #1 thing, don't give a guy like that a free sack by, like, running a keep pass with nobody flashing in front of him. Like, don't do stupid stuff. That's what like Bosa always starts his games like that, like getting a free one. Don't try to block him like haphazardly with 2 tight ends that are on the line of scrimmage and 1 hipped off. Make sure you have a big body blocking him, unless it's like 2 running backs coming from the backfield where he literally has to play like jump the log, right? And then you got to have a clock in your head. And I think this is one of the keys of victory, for me at least, was if Jordan Love doesn't process at a high level with this team, their interior guys aren't great pass rushers, but they will rush the pocket or collapse the pocket. But you talk about what Highsmith's really good. Like, they're both really good players, and they create a lot of problems. And this team is not afraid to play man, and they will bring extra guys. And sometimes they get burnt, but a lot of times they get home, and all they're trying to do is disrupt the quarterback's timing more than anything. And we've had a little bit of a problem with that. So it'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
I am happy that of all the offensive linemen, Zach Tom is the one that is at right tackle, and he'll be playing a lot against TJ Watt this week. He's had a lot of really talented players he's had to go against, from Aiden Hutchinson to Max Crosby. Yeah, big time. And this is just a phenomenal era of edge rushers in the NFL. But you are going to get your heavy dose, and Zach Tom's seen the best of them. He'll get to see TJ Watt this week. Mike, phenomenal stuff as always. Where can we find your work, social media, anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, Mike Wahle 68, Twitter, Process to Perform, and Instagram. Check out the On My Block podcast. I just did a preview for the Steelers game. It's out on the Process to Perform channel on YouTube, and I'll be putting up clips between now and Sunday. Check them out, enjoy them, yada yada.
Always worth checking out Mike's stuff. But by the way, we started the podcast with two players on the offensive side of the ball that Green Bay could have had that were Pittsburgh Steelers. That guy we were just talking about, of course, the cliche, the Packers could have had TJ Watt. Didn't even want to bring it up because everyone's got, but I know people were thinking it as we were talking about this anyway. Another big time player that maybe could have been a Green Bay Packer as well. Mike, awesome. Thank you so much. You can follow him again at Mike Wahle 68. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. For Mike Wahle, I'm Andy Herman. Thanks so much for joining. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.